So
Yeah.
you weren't a fan of the thing, huh?
Do I now?
You weren't that much of a fan?
Oh, of the thing?
Yeah.
No, I liked it. I liked it. I think, what did I rate it? Because I did the blood drop thing,
Yeah.
and there was one thing I didn't like about it, and that was it was a little it was a little slow, kind of through the middle. But
Yeah. So, hang on. Can you hear me okay?
yeah, yeah, I can hear you fine.
Mine's like muffled. So I'm trying to do it to where like I just review old horror classics
hmm
and I was gonna start with a story. So what do you think about the story? Like the storyline?
I liked the storyline. I thought the storyline was really good. Um, Bunch of scientists up in the or down, I guess, in the Antarctic, and this kind of happened across this alien being. I thought the storyline was great, and as far as when it took place, I thought it was totally 80s. It was that typical 80s horror movie, and I love that aspect of it. I
Yeah,
love,
it's pretty accurate.
yeah, yeah. Um, I was actually just reading on the history of Kurt Russell's character. I don't. Do you know how to pronounce it properly? Is it McCready or is it Macready? Because it's spelled like it's Macready.
They pronounce it McCready in the movie,
Did
so
they? Okay, I must have missed it because I'm like I never heard how they pronounced it. So McCready. Okay,
yeah. I
okay,
do think the jacket was a little off the time, but I don't think very many
yeah.
people will notice that.
No, I don't think so.
But I did read also, like during the scenes where you actually see the breath, they actually were freezing there. They made it,
Yeah.
they turned down the temperature so they were actually cold.
Wow. See, I love it when they do stuff like that.
Yeah, I thought it was cool. It made it more realistic.
Yeah.
But so I think I'd give that like if you were to rate that on a scale of 1 to 5, the storyline itself, about a 5.
Yeah, I'd give the storyline a 5. The storyline was very good. I
Yeah.
I really enjoyed the storyline.
So what'd you think of the effects?
So the effects, and for me, I give the effects a full 5.
Yeah?
Like, yeah, oh yeah, because back then practical was everything. They did have some digital technology. I mean, digital's been around for quite a while,
Right.
but the practical, I mean, it was on point. It was so fake looking. It was it
Yeah.
it's almost so terrible that it's good. That's what I liked about it.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, I'm such a huge fan of the old practical effects. Like I love it. I'm a sucker for it. I wished practical was still a thing.
I love how cheesy it was because it actually made it pretty good.
Yes,
So like
absolutely.
I have two favorite scenes when it comes to like the effects. One of them where they were like that guy was on the table and the doctor went to go do that little thing on his chest and then it just like starts opening up.
hmm
Or
Yeah,
like when his neck is stretching and then his head just like slides down the edge of the table.
yeah,
That was so gross, like the little pus bucket. Ugh.
yep.
It was
I
good though.
it was great, and all the work that goes into making something like that. That effects like that back then. I mean, that took forever to make something like that. For it to look so cheesy, because at the time it looked real. People,
Yeah.
it was a different time back then. So seeing something like that on TV back then, it was like, whoa, what is that? Whereas now we're like, all right, whatever. But
Yeah.
I still get the wow factor every time.
Yeah, especially knowing what they're working with. I mean, like the
Mhm.
blood scene where they're testing everybody's blood to see who's a monster.
Yeah, yeah. Putting the,
Insane.
yes, putting the hot thing in it to see how it responds.
Yeah, that was so creepy. I'd probably be
hmm
like that guy in that chair, like freaking out too.
Yeah. Yep.
And you're a filmmaker, so you probably see more into it than I do.
A little bit. It's kind of like knowing how to do a magic trick. You know,
Yeah.
it's really cool to see a professional magician do their thing. But then once you learn how they do it, you're like, well, that's disappointing.
So
You
does it
know,
take away the wow factor, kind of knowing the secrets behind it?
sometimes, not all the time, because I'm not a seasoned enough filmmaker to know how everybody does, what they do. But there are some things where I'm like, oh yeah, that's totally how they did that, and
Well,
it
that's
it
going to
does.
be impressive then if you gave them a 5.
Yeah, no, it really is because again, like I said, practical. I love everything practical. I wish practical was still just how we did it. I know that there are some filmmakers that do a lot of practical, but there's also so much CGI and,
Yeah.
sound effects put in. Like I tend to watch the credits of movies sometimes to see like did they actually use a Foley artist? Because back then people did that. You had two or three people standing in a room breaking celery to recreate the sound of a bone breaking
Oh,
or
that's
you
cool.
know like Foley artists. And I do see there still are movies where they use that, but I'm like, I wonder where that was, because to me you can kind of tell the difference between a digital sound that was added in and like a Foley artist making a sound out of something,
Okay.
if that makes sense. It
In a way,
there's
it
there's
does.
a yeah, there's a difference between someone hitting a frozen piece of meat, to sound like somebody getting punched versus a lot of the digital stuff that you can
Okay.
hear.
So,
So,
do you have a favorite scene when it comes to effects?
um, I think I probably have to go with the iconic where the thing turns into like the spider deal. It's like
Yeah.
the guy's head where he's turning into the spider thing. That to me was, I mean, that's probably my favorite scene because I think that was meant to be everybody's favorite scene.
Yeah.
I think that was John Carpenter's intent when he made that was to like this is going to be the one scene people remember about this movie.
I think the
So
dog scene scared me the most or scarred me.
the one I was going to bring that up to the dogs, like when they started turning the dogs into the aliens, and
Yeah.
they did a really cool job with that. I thought that was awesome because everything they have to do with the hair and just every minute little detail to make it look real and accurate is, to me, that's impressive. Somebody had to work on that with their hands.
Okay. Yeah.
Somebody sat there for hours or maybe even days and just did that. And to me, that's more impressive than like what I do, sitting here and putting in digital effects. Like it, I don't know. I think it's way more impressive that to see something that somebody actually made.
Okay. Well, obviously, I give it a 5 as well because I'm just so fascinated by it. But that kind
Mm-hmm.
of goes into the acting too, because since there's less CGI or no CGI, you have to rely a lot on the actors' capabilities.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they did great. Like, they really portrayed like the tension, like, how do I want to phrase that? Not believing each other, not trusting each other.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that they did really good on that. Not knowing who's going to be the thing.
Yeah, yeah, and the way they left it open too, kind of in the end.
Ah,
Those
I
two
hate
actors.
those.
I know. Well, Kurt Russell and Keith David, the two that were sitting there at the very end. Like you said, you could see their breath. They made it really actually cold so they can, they sold it really well because when Kurt Russell said, well, even if one of us is a thing, neither one of us is in a condition to do anything about it.
Right.
You actually believed that these two men are sitting there in this condition. Like they're really about to kill each other, but it's not going to show that. I liked that they left it wide open to see like, okay, is he the thing or is he the thing?
Yeah.
And they kind of let the cat out of the bag in, I think it was in the early 2000s. There's a Thing video game, and McCready's character came back, so they kind of let the cat out of the bag there that he's the one that survived. But I don't think that was intended to really have anything to do with the timeline, but again, maybe it did. I don't know, but
Yeah, it's
um,
interesting. I didn't know that part.
yeah, I read that a little while ago just to
Okay.
because again, I hadn't seen The Thing. That was one of my things that I hated to admit was out of all the classic movies, The Thing was one of the ones that I hadn't seen until very recently. So
Yeah.
I wanted to get deep into it. I wanted to know, all the plot lines and the backstory and everything there was to it, so I could try to get the most out of it.
I
So that
saw
was just one
something
of
else that was interesting about that. I was reading in it too, and I can't remember who stated it, but I think it was Carpenter. He didn't tell the characters who was infected until the scene of. So the suspense and the tension was pretty realistic and legit because they didn't know until it was
the.
time to film that scene. So I thought that was really fun.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. And I love to hear when directors do stuff like that. Because yeah, it just helps sell it more.
Yeah.
You've already got the great actors doing what they do and selling the story by being phenomenal actors. But then when they don't even know, to me, it just adds more realism to it. And I think that that's awesome when directors do stuff like that. Now I've heard there are some directors out there that have done some pretty traumatic stuff to make it look more real, like
Yeah.
with Shelley Duvall and The Shining. Like I heard that was just like actual torture for her. So there's some directors I think maybe take it a little too extreme, but that's why they have classic movies now, and I don't yet. So they know something. They know something that us little indie guys don't for sure.
Yeah, they know what sell, I guess.
Yeah.
So I don't know a lot about cinematography,
Hmm.
but it seems like this video they did pretty well on that. Like the biggest jump scare for me wasn't even that big of a scene. It was that scene where oh, I can't remember his name, but they're like closing up something and he turns around because he thinks he sees a shadow and he has
Hmm.
that candle. I
Hmm.
don't remember why, but for some reason that is the one scene that made me jump out of all of it.
Hmm.
It was crazy. I don't know if it's the way it was filmed or what, but
Yeah, I think that was probably the intention. It wasn't meant to be a big, huge jump scare, but it's like, whoa, what was that?
yeah, and it's the one that got me out of all of it.
Yeah,
So
no, that was a good one. To me, I think there was when well, I can't remember the character's name. Now, I remember the actor. It was Wilford Brimley's character when they had him locked up out in the shed.
oh yeah.
When like the second or third time he went out, when Kurt Russell went out and was talking to him through the door, he's like, I just want to come inside. That I just want to come inside. There's nothing wrong with me. Like, can I please just come inside? To me, that was creepy as hell because you didn't know if he was being genuine because either he was terrified that he was going to get taken, he was going to get killed by this thing, or if he really was a thing and trying to make them believe him so that he could come inside and kill them and what. So to me that scene was so confusing, but Wilford Brimley sold it so well. It was,
Yeah.
to me, that was probably the one of the creepiest scenes out of the whole thing because there was almost two sides to it. You felt empathy because you're like, oh my God, they got this guy locked up out in the shed. That's terrible. I would hate to be in that situation. So
Yeah.
you felt for him on a human level there, but then you're like, well, but wait a minute. What if he's a thing and he's just saying that so he can come inside? So that was one of the scenes that got me the most. There was no jump scares, no nothing like that, but it was like, ooh, it just gave me that
Yeah.
creepy, yeah, eerie feeling at,
It
at
just goes
that
back to
scene.
the acting. It was so good. So
Mm-hmm.
crazy.
For sure.
Um, I had one other I was going to bring up. I'm trying to remember what it was. Oh, where they were fighting downstairs, like because of the the blood bank.
Mm-hmm.
That was pretty good because they made some
Yeah.
good like. I'm drawing a blank on what I'm trying to say here. My dog's distracted me. But yeah, just the fighting between them, and it was hard to tell who really was infected and who wasn't.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
thought that was pretty good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, the fact. Oh, there you go. Get him. Um, yeah, one of the things they did effectively too with um, Keith David's character is like how he kind of disappeared for a little while after the whole blood test thing. He disappeared and then all of a sudden just kind of comes back. Like,
Yeah, that actually got me on edge. Like,
yeah, yeah. Like, what is he one now? Like, they just the whole movie, I think, did a really good job of just making you guess. Who is it? It wasn't. It was more of a psychological, to me anyway. It was more of a
yeah,
psychological horror than it was. I mean, of course, it had a lot of gore. It had it did have some jump scares. It had everything that I think an effective horror movie should have. But I also really, really enjoyed how psychological it was. That it wasn't just a bunch of gore and blood and effects. And I like that
right.
he really made it a psychological thriller as well. To me, those are the most entertaining movies. I mean,
Yeah, instead of just your typical slashers.
yeah, and don't get me wrong, I love slashers. Like
Yeah,
those are some of my favorites.
yeah.
But to me it was very effective. That's probably the best way that I can put it. Is it
Leaves
was
you
very
sitting on the edge,
yeah. You're
sitting on
just
the edge of your chair, like,
yes. The whole movie was just filled with so much tension, and
yes,
that to me that's what a horror movie should be. There should be little lulls, I think, and like I said earlier, that it got a little slow there towards the middle, but it wasn't so much so that you tuned out. Because there are some movies where it does that. It does a really great job of building up tension, and then there's just such a long period of kind of nothing that
nothing.
you kind of check out. And even if it gets really good in like the third act or whatever, you're already kind of checked out by that point.
Right.
And the thing didn't do that for me. It died down just a little bit, but it was just enough to where it's like, okay, I can relax, and it's like, oh wait, okay, here we go again. I really like that. He wants to be in the video.
I know. I feel like the part where they kind of slow down, it was really to bring in some of that paranoia and tension and build it more.
Mm-hmm.
So I like that. I like that it was a mix of horror, tension, paranoia. It's almost more sci-fi for me than it is horror, but I can see
Yeah.
why it's a classic.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And that's the sci-fi angle too was great because that was super popular at the time. Because you got to think, at the time there was Close Encounters of the Third Kind was a big thing. Um, what's the other one? There was another pretty popular. Well, I mean, obviously Alien. But I feel like there was another Alien one. Anyway, I don't know, but like the whole sci-fi alien genre back then was pretty popular, not only in horror but like in comedy because you had Earth Girls Are Easy, um, and you had Daryl, about the little
Yep.
kid that you had E.T. I mean, sci-fi was kind of it back in the 80s because I think
Right.
there was still so much we didn't know about what could possibly be out in out in the universe, and it just I don't know. I kind of wish we could go back to that nostalgia, and I think there's a lot of movies and TV shows. Stranger Things especially does a
Yeah.
fantastic freaking job of bringing back that nostalgia, and I kind of wish that would make a comeback. I really do, because I think that was another reason why I enjoyed The Thing so much, because I didn't get a chance to see it when I was younger, so seeing it now as an adult, it took me back to that time.
Okay, yeah.
So, yeah, that was one thing that I really, really enjoyed about it, because there's nothing better to me than just sitting back, throwing something on, and just getting totally immersed in it. And The Thing did that for me. It really did. It did that for me 100%, because it had the sci-fi, it had the gore, it had the tension built. I mean, it just had everything for me that I enjoy in a horror movie.
Yeah, I feel the same way. And I like that the alien or the thing wasn't like the traditional aliens you see.
Right.
It was like literally a life form DNA thing that just attaches to something and transforms it. I think that's so cool and so different.
Yeah, and it was incredibly different at the time because again, you had Alien, with Sigourney Weaver, where it actually showed a terrifying alien.
Right.
Uh, Again, another classic, phenomenal film.
Oh, yeah.
You had Close Encounters, where they showed it was a little bit into the movie. I mean, they didn't show any aliens for a long time, but even then, they had a being, But the thing, I I think the title kind of was very well thought of too. The Thing,
Yeah.
like, because
Yeah.
what is it? Well, it's just it's a thing. I don't know what it is. It's a thing.
Yep.
So, and you never ever actually saw what the thing was. You just saw the byproduct of what it did to people once it attached, and that was super genius as far as I'm concerned. That was like way up here on the genius scale.
So I'm not gonna tell the audience what happens, but I do want to know what people think of the fire scene because I thought that was pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So
Are you talking about the final one?
yeah, towards
Yeah.
the end there, the
Yep.
squealing. It kind of it gave me Ghostbuster vibes. We're
A little
all in
bit.
that circle,
Yep.
but I'll
A
leave it
little bit.
there because hopefully people will watch it. But
Yeah. If
so,
for those that haven't seen it yet, it's like a 40-year-old movie. But hey, like I
oh,
said,
that's okay.
I hadn't seen it.
I mean,
I
I
hadn't
haven't
seen it
seen
until
it until
recently.
recently either.
Yeah,
So
yeah. There's got to be some people out there still that haven't seen it. The younger generation of folks nowadays that are not even old enough to know anything about the 80s. They haven't seen it, and I think that would be great. Is for some of these younger people to go back and watch what we grew up with.
right.
I
I
do that with my kids.
yeah.
Not like with the really super traumatic stuff, but the I don't know. Maybe I'm a bad parent, but I don't think that having my kid watch, Freddy and Jason, I don't think that's the worst thing they could be watching because number one, it's fake, and I explain it very well that this is fiction, it's fake, it's not real, it's a
Yep.
movie. There's plenty of other real crap out there that they could be watching. I think that's
Exactly.
far worse than getting them into a very, very enjoyable genre of filmmaking.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think The Thing would be a perfect, maybe not necessarily a starter film, because how I know we belong to some of the same Facebook groups, and people are always like, what would be a good starter film to show my 12-year-old,
Yeah.
maybe The Thing wouldn't be the best for somebody that young, but
I mean, it
for
wouldn't
like
be
a
the
teenage,
worst.
yeah, there's for sure. Maybe that age, 12 to 15, if they haven't seen like a legit horror movie, The Thing would be a good one for that because it's not so over the top with the scares and gore that it's going to
Right.
be traumatic.
Right.
It's just, I don't know. I think it would be fun to show somebody that's never seen that crazy practical stuff. Because they're going to pick it apart. I know my kids did. They're like, "Oh my god, Dad, that looks so fake." I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, it does now, but back 40 years ago, it didn't.
Exactly.
It
Which
was something they had never seen.
that's kind of what my podcast is for. I absolutely love horror stuff,
Uh-huh.
and everybody who knows me, this they associate with me with is horror stuff. And I
Uh-huh.
love all the newer horror films, but when I started getting asked, because I've been in a couple of horror movies now, when I started
Uh-huh.
getting asked about like the old movies, I realized I've pretty much seen all remakes.
Yeah.
And so I felt like a letdown for the horror community. So I want to go back and just review all the classics, like the true classics.
Mm-hmm.
And so this was a good start for me. This is
Yeah.
my
Is this
first
your first
one.
one?
Yep.
Okay. Well,
I
that's
did
awesome.
watch American Werewolf in London too.
Okay.
So I'm gonna have another review on that one. But the thing is, what got me in it, I dipped my toes in, and oh my god, it was amazing. And I had a husky I was watching it with. So
Yeah.
the
Yep.
opening scene, I'm looking at my husky. I'm like, I don't know if I trust you now.
Yeah, I know. Go over there.
Yeah. But yeah,
You de-
overall, I freaking loved it. I loved everything about it. The acting, the effects, just the suspense, the cinematography.
Mhm.
I give it a 10 out of 10.
Okay. So I think overall, yeah, I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10.
That slow
Overall.
middle.
Only because, for me, there was just that little bit of slow middle. Um, and I also think that it probably could have been, I think it could have been a little shorter, but
Yeah.
but back then that's what they did. They made 2.5 hour movies, and it's fine.
Good.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, that's another one.
I'm sure I want to make a lot of people mad with my review on that one.
Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't the greatest for sure. I'm really excited to hear what you thought about American Werewolf in London. I kind of want to hear that episode because I've got some opinions about that one too. I saw that one. That was actually the first werewolf movie I saw when I was very young. I've mentioned it on my podcast where my uncles are kind of the ones that introduced me to horror by force. They would babysit me on the weekends or whatever, and they would just torture me, with
Yeah.
not only horror movies, but they would play pranks. They'd go
Yep.
outside, like they'd cut the power to the house and go outside and beat on the windows. Oh, it was terrible. Yeah, it was terrifying.
I feel like all the true horror fans, we were introduced to it by traumatic events
Yeah.
because my grandmother and my uncle are what got me hooked on horror, and they're both traumatic. Like my grandma, my first scary movie ever, Chucky, Child's Play.
Mm-hmm.
And she had the Chucky doll in a glass box above our bed because I shared the bed with my grandma.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a black light in there. And my uncle put real knives in his pockets. So I went to bed every night with a clothes hanger, thinking for some reason, if he came alive, that clothes hanger was going to save me.
It was.
And then my uncle, like, they had like a glass wall in the background of our bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
And my uncle would come up to it in the middle of the night with a freaking scream mask and just scare the crap out of me.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So they got me started in horror, and for some reason, even though I was terrified, I loved it. So
Yeah.
sending me down this rabbit hole.
Yep. Well, I'm glad to hear that I'm not the only one then that was traumatized as a child by relatives that are supposed to be all loving. They just like to traumatize the crap out of you. So I'm glad to hear I'm not the only one. But you're right. It turned me into the horror fan that I am, and I'm thankful for it now. I still hate them a little bit, but I'm thankful for what it turned into.
Yeah. Well, thank you again for coming on my podcast.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And for the any of you watching, I hope that you guys can leave your favorite movie suggestions, or if you've seen the thing, any. Oh well, I'll put it in pieces later.
There we go.
So thank you for hopping on here with me though, and bearing with me.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. Anytime. I would love to come back and review some old classics.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'll have you on for more.
Okay, very cool.
All right, take care.
Well, thank you. Yeah, you too.